Hello, and welcome to Stop Let's Team Up, episode 98, First Time in the Fourth World. Today I'm going to cover, or chat, I just want to chat loosely about my impressions of reading Jack Kirby's Fourth World in publication order, which is how it is set up in the Jack Kirby's Fourth World Omnibus, which has all of his Fourth World material in one giant volume. So this is part of my great apology tour as a comic fan, is being not as versed in Jack Kirby as I thought I was. I'm reading his FF, a lot of which I had not read. I'm getting closer and closer to stuff I'm familiar with. The Fourth World, I've read bits and pieces of this. Commandy, I've read bits and pieces. OMAC, bits and pieces. And as if you've been listening to the podcast, you know when I was doing Danger Street, his 2 issues of art, his 70s DC art is kind of what's jumping out to me as what I love the most. But this is what I'm least familiar with, especially something really, most important part of it, I think. And we'll get to that. But, so I'm reading it for the very first time. And just so I'm going to read you a little bit from the, this omnibus has Mark Evinger's introduction. I'm assuming it's from the other Fourth World omnibuses, probably volumes 1 or 2. And I just want to read this little section kind of about the history of the Fourth World, because I'm not as versed in it. But this is what I had read and was kind of interesting to me. You know, he had wanted to do it for Thor. Marvel didn't want to do it. Some concept. So it was an open concept. And then the former would change several times from when he was originally planning it and before he got to DC. Jack thought the mythos could flow out of any number of books, and then when DC asked for 3 bi-monthlies, he settled on The Forever People, Orion, and Mr. Miracle. The umbrella title for the series was to be The New Gods, but then by accident or design, the Orion book was renamed with that title later for reasons unknown, or sometimes Jack Kirby's Fourth World. For reasons unknown, the overall series came to be known as the Fourth World, or sometimes Jack Kirby or Kirby's Fourth World. Even Jack couldn't quite explain the numbering system on that one. The story which he saw was finite. At least in the initial arc, there would be a war against an intergalactic villain named Darkseid. The battle might encompass a few thousand pages before it ended, but it would end. And it would end with a spectacular finale. Then he hoped it would be all edited down and collected into a set of well-printed, full-color volumes that be kept perpetually in print, like Mr. Tolkien's magnum opus. Some other interesting things, he originally thought that he would do the first few, and then other people would take on books. Steve Ditko, Mr. Miracle, Wally Wood on Orion, and either John Romita or Don Heck on The Forever People. But all these things changed. So the books came out, but it didn't start in any of those titles. It started in Superman's pal, Jimmy Olsen. And there's a lot of myth that, give me your worst selling book, or this and that and this. But he was assigned the book and given some leeway. So this whole volume, this whole adventure, starts in a comic that I've always kind of looked down upon. Little snobbery. That and Lois Lane, there were never things that my brother bought, and if I read any, they were in reprints and 100-page giants. They're not something that I have read a lot of. They are very much of their time. They're kitschy little kid books. I don't think me, as a man at 60, I'm going to feel any nostalgia for the style in which they're written. And I like Silver Age and comics. I do. But I think sometimes that is based on when you get into a character. And it's like Supergirl. It's not something I read, I say, as religiously my older brother did. He probably read a lot of Lois Lane, a lot of Jimmy Olsen, because he's 10 years older than and I'm not. So I always kind of poo-pooed it. I always kind of looked down upon him. And I always knew about these books. And in the 80s, they were reprinting it. So I would dip in when they do the collected, the nice hard card reprints. My brother was handing me these. I more remembered Commandy and OMAC and Demon than I ever did these books. But I followed them in later adventures. Darkseid becomes a major villain again in the 80s. He gets bigger and bigger and badder, and then, he's the big bad in the Great Darkness Saga, which is collected in the next Fourth World Omnibus, Volume 2, which I bought it. It's great. And I'm going to continue my Fourth World reading that book in that order, in that reading order, because that's what was neat about the big omnibus that I'm reading. It is in publication order. So I'm halfway through, and I have read Jimmy Olsen's 133 through 145, New Gods 1 through 6, Forever People 1 through 6, Mr. Miracle 1 through 6. First of all, let's start with the introduction to Jimmy Olsen. It's very odd. I don't know how close it is to an old school Jimmy Olsen comic. I've only read maybe 4 or 5 of those. It doesn't seem much so. The art is the roughest of any of it that is in this, and I mean rough in there's some things with it that are a little weird. One, that Superman had to be redrawn to look like he did in his books. You couldn't get the full Kirby look, which is very different. And in this, there is places where you can go online and see the difference. It's a little shocking. I don't know if they're trying to make him look like Wayne Boring Superman at times or Kurt Swan Superman at times. Probably Swan, but it jumps around in my brain. It's like, who's drawing Superman? And Adams does some of the Superman figures on the covers, which is kind of cool. So it blends in, but it sticks out at the same time in some ways. It doesn't look, knowing it it's going on, but it's not as shockingly bad as I thought it was going to be, and I knew it was coming. But what I like is, in the Jimmy Olsen, is we're getting to see the Cabinets Project, the Return of the Guardian, the Newsboys Legion, all these things of Jack's coming back. That stuff that I love from like 90s early aught comics in Superboy, and in the post-Crisis Superman reboot, all the way, I like the Byrne stuff. I like the Triangle. I like after he leaves. I love the Triangle era. That is my favorite Superman, and the Cabinets Project and the DNA Aliens and the Newsboy Legion and the clones of Jim Harper all are huge parts of Jimmy Olsen, and it's great. You get to meet the Forever People first. You get just all these great Kirby inventions, and I think it is this first half of this 1,536-page book I'm reading. They're the best. It's my favorite stuff. It's the stuff that's sticking with me the most. It is silly. It is broad. It is action-packed. It is full of life. I find it amazing. The comedic stuff of the Newsboys Legion normally doesn't always land. It's a comedy sometimes in comics. I think you either can do it or you can't. Jack can do it. I mean, he's really rocking it. Scrapper and the little mini Scrapper, 2 of my favorite things. It's just zany and weird and pop culture. It's just beautiful. And as I'm reading his FF, and I'm gotten to the point to where it's him in Senate. To me, that's Jack's FF, and it's freaking amazing. I am really, really, especially in the oversized volume, loving what I'm seeing in this. You've got, in the first couple stories alone, you've got Jimmy Olsen, the Mountain of Judgment, and he's in his supercar, and just the page layouts and the action. There's the motorcycle chase in the second issue, and the Mountain of Judgment, which is like a giant rolling train that takes 2 pages. We got Morgan Edge introduced in this. Heck, I just got to the first Funky Flashman. If you don't know who Funky Flashman is, Google it. He was a big character in the Secret Society Supervillains comic, which is available on the app. Read it. If you have the 2 hardcovers, do not get rid of them. I've done that twice. I'm an idiot. It is a great comic. And some of the New God stuff ends up in that. And that is in the second volume of this. But it is just great. I mean, the art is gorgeous. It is so much fun. And these characters start getting introduced, and is Forever People? Let's see. Forever People is the first new book. And it comes right after Jimmy Olsen 135. Well, let me make sure. 33, 34. Yeah, 35, because the first three issues you read in this is Jimmy Olsen. And then we start adding in. Okay, so let's talk about Forever People, because they're next. I know who they are, and I'm enjoying their comics. It's been a while since I've read one, because it's been a lot of Jimmy Olsen and other things. The next one I read is going to be 7 coming up. But I'm enjoying it. It's more a Superman story, because he's in most of the story. So I think they're just kind of tying it together. The redrawing of Superman in that issue in Forever People 1 is probably the most heavy-handed and most obvious, but we get to see a Boom Tomb for the first time in some ways. So I've been enjoying those. It's just not sticking. It's just I don't know if it's registering with me as much as the other stuff is, but that's where Darkseid is a lot of the time. So I'm kind of reading it. To be honest, this is all kind of blend together because I'm reading it as a big magnum opus, as Mr. Evinger said earlier. Next came New Gods #1. This, folks, if you have not read this, what planet have you been living on? This is stunning from the get-go. It's got one of those partial photo background pieces of art that Jack is famous for at this time with Orion. It's got this flashback to the destruction of One Gods and the birth of New Genesis and Apocalypse and Orion. And it's got a really great splash page with Orion in the best costume of Orion. And we get some of the history of the New Gods. Metron meets it. Then the final new book is Mr. Miracle, which is the one I think I read the most as a kid. I think I liked him, and because when it came back with Steve Englert and Marshall Rogers, I read it pretty religiously. And Scott's I'm a huge fan of Scott from Bwahaha League, but his stories are more one and done superhero comics in a lot of ways than the others, which I enjoy. And we get to meet his predecessor. We meet O'Brien. And the stories I think the stories in Mr. Miracle are more traditional superhero, even though it is very New God-y. But all of them are having good arcs. I mean, we have Jimmy, building a friendship with the Newsboy Legion and all the other things, the Guardian, which is just great. He gets turned into a giant, the DNA Project. It's been infiltrated by Darkseid. We find out that the young Newsboy Legion they're really not, they're clones, I think. Is this where we find? No, I don't know if we have. I think I know that, so it's just jumping in my head. We get to meet Dubalix, who I love as a character. All of them, they're all really good, and they're all very different. The new warriors, Jesus. The Forever People end up on Earth, and they're being followed by Darkseid. And he's sending Calabac after him because he wants the infinite. They become the Infinite Man, and he wants that power. You've got the court intrigue of the New Gods of Apocalypse, New Genesis, and Darkseid's planet. But we also have Darkseid popping up into people's homes and offices. In New Gods 2, he's waiting in someone's office where the humans who have become the allies of Orion meet him. It's like he's just like a regular bad guy who pops up. He's not the guy just standing in the shadows all the time until the big battle comes, which is kind of weird. So basically, let me kind of do these better, a little less jumbled than that. I was just going way too fast and way too. So each book's a little different. Mr. Miracle's kind of like his repeated adventures, and then Big Barter shows up, and I've just read the one with the Furies are first introduced, and all that. But they're very different. Mr. Miracle, I'll say on that, I like it because they're a lot of one and dones. He has a new escape. There's always something, but it is always, I think it's some of Jack's best work in what I've been reading. But it's really a solid one. You can read every issue and understand what's going on. For other people, it's okay. It's those weird, odd teenagers, superpowers. I don't know if it's kind of an X-Men vibe or not, but it's like I said, it's not the one that's clicking with me the most. There's been some really beautiful art in it. Beautiful landscapes and big 2-page spreads and giant page spreads. Amazing. New Gods has been really cool. What it's odd having, because I've read so little of it, it's him having that group of 4 normal humans helping him fight Darkseid. That has become the most intriguing thing in that. That's a big premise so far in the 6 issues, and I wasn't as familiar with it as I thought. It's really new to me, but it is absolutely the best part about it. They're putting these positions. They're battling gods. There's an older gentleman. It's a good mix of characters. It's a lot of fun. And then back to what I said. The Jimmy Olsen stuff's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. I'm enjoying it to no end. It is the most for younger readers of all the books, because Jack knew he was writing for all ages. But it is so much fun. The characters are great. The comedy's working. The art is spot on. It's just amazing. And you have 3 issues where Don Rickles is a major player, and his brother, who works for Morgan Edge, his twin cousin. It is zany and weird, and I just loved it. So I'm at the midway point. Darkseid, his machinations are going well for him. Orion has had some run-ins with him. The Forever People had another person join them in the Infinite and then be sacrificed. Sonny Sumo, who I liked as a character. He was kind of a kung fu character in the late. These are all coming out in 1970. I've just made it to 1972. So I'm only 8 years old, or not even 8 years. I'm 7 years old, and so probably I've seen some of these have been given to me off the newsstand, because I'm not remembering when I read these. But Huey was given, by 6 or 7, Huey was putting comic books in my hand. And Hugh, my brother Hugh, as I've talked about, is a huge Kirby fan. So I'm looking forward to reading more. I'm about to start a week staycation. I'm going to read more of this. I'm going to read more of this because I find it is such an important piece of comic history. And it is blowing my mind. I've talked about this when we talked about FF with Kirby, or when I've talked about it, that I'm really kind of discovering Kirby anew late in life, and that's a good thing. But this stuff is so powerful. This is such a change to the comics. These series are very important because it creates this mythos that is a whole nother layer added to DC. It is Jack showing us what can be done. It is the purest of his stuff. And I think it's some of his best. I'm going to go back, and Dave Steele said he's reading OMAC and falling in love with it. I would like to read OMAC and Commandy after that. I really want to get the Bronze Age Omnibus, which has the Demon in it, because I think the art on the Demon is just mind-alteringly good. But Jack is so important, and I'm kind of learning that. I have known it. Now I'm starting to kind of getting the layers to it, and it's been great. I don't think I will finish it before my vacation, because I've got some other things I'm reading. I'm reading Chain Gang, the Marvel event, and I'm enjoying it, but I gotta take breaks after every 4 or 5 issues because it's not the greatest. It's still fun. It's something probably I would read in a trade and enjoy, but I'm kind of just jumping around. I read some Alpha Flight. I didn't want to talk about that. I'm reading the Avengers a little bit, few issues here and there. I do have got to start up some of my FF reading in the issues in the 80s. Not 1980s, but the issue numbers in the 80s. So I really want to get back to that. Also, I should be getting my copy of Micronauts Omnibus Volume 1. Excited, should have that. And my buddy Ken, who I've talked about, found me at Ollie's The Watchmen Companion hardcover. I'm excited to get that because I've heard of it, never seen it. That made me go, and because I don't own a copy of Watchmen, I don't know where mine went. I think I gave it to a kid. I hope they were the right age. But I ordered me the deluxe hardcover of Watchmen so I can go on my shelf with my Omnis, because you should own Watchmen, as you should a lot Alan Moore. So looking forward to reading that stuff. And I've got the first 3 of the little mini Masterworks, as I like to call them, the smaller versions of the Masterworks of Captain America. Instead of buying Omnibus Volume 1, I've decided to get those that get up to Omnibus 2, and I may get Omnibus 2 when it comes out at the end of the year. Just so I want this more. I want the Jack Kirby. I want more Jack Kirby. So that's what's coming up. So, hey, this is dropping on the 14th of April, 2024. I'm going on a staycation, which means I will be able to record more. This is the first episode in almost 10 days because just budget time at work, and I had to get some stuff done, and bandwidth was narrow. So, that being said, on Tuesday, there will be a Starman, and it will be the last Roger Stern, Will Payton Starman. It is part 2A of the Crisis of Red Kryptonite, so I'm going to kind of speed through the Superman parts and talk more about the Starman part, but I'm going to cover that event. Thursday, there will be some Legion. It will be the last of the Cochran backups before the book becomes Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes with 197. Yay. And next week, I'm not sure what it's going to be, but it will be something fun. All right? So as always, folks, be safe, be smart. Please be kind to one another and read some Jack Kirby comics. Do it. Do it now.